Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Welcome to another episode of Blacks Only. That's right, Blacks Only, the only on the Big Liberty Show. I'm your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty, and I'm glad to be back. Man, oh man, has it not been an interesting week in the news cycle. Remember, Blacks Only is that current affairs show that makes fun of society's obsession with identity politics, the very things that don't matter. And we argue that the real diversity that matters in society is intellectual diversity. So yes, you will have a cast, or if you will, or a studio rather, of black individuals only, but each and every one of us is different. We hold different views, and that is essentially the argument that we're making, is that society is not the same racially. We're not homogenous. In any event, having just covered that again, because you guys always ask me in the comment section, why did I name it Blacks Only? I have two interesting faces on this studio. One who you saw last week, but another who I think you haven't seen in quite a while, and I've been trying to pin him down. He's quite the international man of mystery, very hard to pin down. I am, of course, talking about Jimmy Ramokgopa and Mpiyakhe Dhlamini. Fellas, welcome to the studio. How are we doing?
Good, thank you.
We're good, man.
Excellento. Guys, we're going to hop straight into it because I think it's been a relatively busy news week to an extent, or at least on social media, there's been issues that have dominated the attention of the nation. Guys, let's take two steps back and look at a topic which we covered in good detail last week. So we'll begin here. And that is the State of the Nation address. In last week's show, we had Kanye Makubane, Snezonke, and you, Mpiyakhe, and we looked at the meat and potatoes of the speech itself. I don't think we're going to go back there, but let's look at some of the politics that played out in and around this particular speech. And I'm going to put something to you, gentlemen, and I want to hear what your view is. After it being about a week now since that speech, I'm of the view that it would seem like our politicians live in an ivory tower that just doesn't recognize the reality on the ground. Where am I going with this? We just spoke off air, Jamie, and I mentioned the idea that as that speech was happening, in that very same city, a few kilometers away in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, a woman and her two children were literally being burnt alive by an alleged individual who, as far as I know the backstory, and again, I don't have all the facts, don't get me wrong, I think the police will have to uncover this. But then that same individual who is alleged to have burnt this mother and two children was then the following day, as the politicians were having the debate now on the president's speech, and this video came out, and I didn't share the video, but I shared a screen grab of it. Two men burning another human being alive on a fire. This man is pleading for his life, screaming from pain, obviously from this fire. And these two men are taunting him, saying, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done this crime that you did. Jimmy, where I'm going with this, and I want you to chime in first, is to me, it seemed as though just a few kilometers away, our politicians are talking about these lofty ideas that on the ground, real everyday issues are just forgotten. Like there's no sense really that what those men were doing at that very moment recognized that there was even a speech by the president happening somewhere. Am I being unfair maybe in saying this?
I think you're being realistic and absolutely truthful in what you're saying. In a sense that politicians have lost touch with reality. You know, politicians are too stuck in ideologies. They're too stuck in trying to have like this high-level discussion that's actually meaningless to the person on the ground. You know, people on the ground need solutions, right? They shouldn't be concerned about sovereign wealth fund or anything like that. They just want to know that they are going to be able to get employment opportunity soon. You know, and that's what people care about. You know. They don't want to know whether, they don't want to know whether we live in a socialist state or whether we live in a capitalist state, because the majority of people don't really. I don't want to say they don't understand, but it makes no material difference, you know, to the day-to-day lives that many of us live, you know. So in that sense, I think you're quite correct in saying that they live in ivory towers. And what happened, like the scenes that played out, the violent scenes that played out, it's actually more of like a reflection of what's really happening in the broader society. You know, people have given up in the justice system. You know, if we still had faith that, you know, a perpetrator like that would actually go behind bars, the person would have been, you know, escorted to the nearest police station.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I want to come to Mpiyakhe on this, because I think this is the foundational point I want us to zoom in on. There's clearly, Mpiyakhe, a failure of what is the state's responsibility. If you look at it from maybe a classical libertarian perspective, the idea that the state has a responsibility to protect us, number one, from foreign aggression, number two, from domestic threats, the idea of a criminal who threatens life, liberty, and property. And of course, number three, the idea that the state must mediate our disputes, you know, a judiciary. And it does seem as though the public in this country are now at a point where they're just fed up and don't even trust the state with what is their rightful responsibility.
No, and you wouldn't blame the public in this case. I mean, it's unfortunate that people are resorting to vigilantism, because obviously with vigilantism you'll always get like innocent people caught up, and there's no due process. There's none of those things that are needed to actually guarantee justice. So it's not a good solution. But what are people supposed to do? I mean, it all starts with the failure of the police, and then it propagates throughout the entire justice system. It starts with the police, and then it goes to the prosecution, it goes to the courts, and there's a failure. It's all every step of the way. And this is why people are giving up now, because government, one of the things that you need to understand about South Africa, first of all, a lot of it is incompetent, just people can't do their jobs. But a serious part of it is the fact that if you look at the actual budgets that South Africa has been working with, let's say for the past 10 years, you will see something interesting, like the criminal and justice cluster, which includes judiciary, NPA, and police. That structure either declines in real terms in terms of funding, or stays constant. And then like other things like welfare, payment on interest debts, like, you know, outlays to SOEs and so on, all of those things increase. But now this critical, vital part of the state's role is just the budget for it decreases. And so I was happy to hear that they've increased the NPA's budget by 100 million rands for the first time in 5 years. That's a good thing, but it's not enough. We have a lot of capacity to rebuild.
And it must be said, again, I must come back to the politics of it, guys. The very same ANC that today, a slight shift of topic, but I wanted to zoom in on this one. The very same ANC that disbanded specialized units and then No. I'm thinking of the police commissioner himself, the one who got sick and was sent to prison. Jackie Celebi as another character. The very same ANC that disbanded specialized units, the very same ANC in the run-up to a Zuma administration disbanded the Scorpions, which was linked to the judiciary, which had a 99% success rate of convictions. The very same ANC that essentially, in terms of the politics of their national democratic revolution, this is the socialist ideology that informs them, wants to centralize policing, all policing, including your metro police. They want to create one centralized police force. It is that same ANC that has failed the communities that are now taking their frustrations out on alleged criminals. But this is where I wanted to go, Jimmy, and I wanted to chime in very briefly. There's something scary about when a state fails at its responsibility. It can have the unintended consequence of turning maybe ordinary good people into monsters. I mean, that image, and again, I will not flight the video, but I'll put a screen grab of what I'm talking about here. And even then, I'm reluctant to do that. But just for context, a failure of the state or a legitimate role of the state can lead to something as monstrous as everyday people like you and me becoming cold-hearted killers, burning someone alive. Your comment on that, just your thoughts on that?
Look, South Africa is violent, right? When the state fails in terms of security, we shouldn't be surprised that this happens, because we've seen how this also happens when the state fails economically through xenophobic attacks, etc., etc., etc. You know, the hard question is, how do we then address the violent nature of South Africa, right? Do we address it with more violence, maybe through death penalty, etc., etc., etc.
Which one of South Africa's favorite politicians is very popularly touting, a one Herman Mashaba. I saw a headline, I think, saying, "I'm in favor of the death penalty." But I'm sorry, I took your thoughts away. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but something has to be done.
Okay.
In a violent society that has literally gotten out of hand, right? In my opinion, there's only two ways of resolving this issue, right? Number one, with the iron fist.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be one way.
Exactly.
In terms of the options,
which works. We've seen it in countries, African countries that aren't successful economically, but the nature of their crimes aren't as bad as the ones in South Africa. It's because they have a heavy hand, or you improve the economy, So at some stage we need to decide ourselves how are we going to deal with this, which isn't quite an easy question to answer, to be quite honest, and I do not have the answer to that right now.
Mpiyakhe, is there an answer to this?
So what I always say is that politics is exciting, but policy is boring and it's hard. And so this is I think this case here again. If you look at the actual things that the crime that happens in South Africa and the political antics around crime and all of that is what people focus on. But if you look at the actual policy, the things that could make a difference, like decentralizing the police, I think one person mentioned it during the SONA, that you decentralize the police, you make sure that it's within municipalities or provinces at the very least, and allow law enforcement to take place locally. Because if you have that kind of solution, you will have you will have sensible law enforcement. You will have people like you will have proper prioritization. The community, like the station commander who will be hired by the community, will be making those decisions like based on what the community needs.
Absolutely.
For example, like the station commander might decide, okay, we're not going to focus on like non-violent drug offenses, for example. This is not a priority for us. It's not related to any other violent crimes. We're just going to focus on violent crimes. You need to be able to do that. And someone who understands the community, who has credibility, you can go to people and actually people can trust them and talk to them. And so that's what you need. You need a localized police force. And that's and that's just one solution, but you also need capacity to figure out a funding model for all of these decentralized police forces and so on. And so these are boring issues. These are boring issues, but they are necessary if you're going to solve this problem.
I fully agreed. And maybe as a final point, I want us to move on to other issues. You raised a very important issue that I think has repercussions in other areas. If there is a failure in policing, and this is what you have happen in the public, right? Out of making monsters out of good people ordinarily. Imagine then when there's a failure in other critical areas where the government, rightly or wrong, has appropriated for itself the responsibility to dish this thing out. So let's look at, for example, and I want to draw a little bit from the speech that the president made on the president saying, we're going to double down on national health insurance. We're going to double down on expropriation without compensation. Can you imagine now the state running these two things, being absolutely terrible at them, and what the public or what South Africa as a public looks like at that point? Do you want to maybe comment on that? Should the state be giving itself these sort of powers when it does fail at something, the externalities are terrible?
You've actually put a thought in my mind, when you talk about NHI and you talk about the fact that now it will come with the impression that all healthcare is entitled to everyone, right? I think everyone has a right to healthcare, but then I just wonder how far these protests are going to go. They're going to go, I don't want to sound like an elitist or anything like that.
Hey man, speak your truth.
No, but you raise a very important point.
Yeah.
And the sense of entitlement is going to flow everywhere, where everyone will feel that, it's very difficult to say this, where everyone will feel that everything must come to everyone equitably, even though it's not economically possible. Like what we are seeing now with free education, right? People don't understand that we can't all get everything that we want. simply because we are not all the same. It should make sense to everyone, to any person, everywhere, anywhere in the world. It should make sense that there are certain people who can afford certain things and therefore they'll get certain things. Understand? And there's certain people who can't afford certain things. That doesn't mean that we prevent people from being able to one day afford these things, And I'm not speaking from a point of privilege.
Yeah.
I'm speaking from a point that right now I afford certain things, right? Before I couldn't afford certain things.
I think that's the key. Yeah. And we're coming to that one.
Yeah. So how do we then create a society, that understands that? It's important for people to understand that things won't happen the way we want them all the time, and that, I think that's where we need effective leadership that can actually drive people to think in a particular way.
So what you just said now reminds me of a Sowell quote, like when he says that the first law of economics is scarcity and the first law of politics is to ignore the first law of economics. And so, because what you're referring to now is precisely the scarcity problem. Like how do you provide limited resources to basically everyone, which is what South Africa is trying to do, and you can't. Whoever you give, you're taking from someone else. That's just a reality of life, of economics. And so this is something that at a deeper level South Africa will have to deal with.
Absolutely.
Not all of us can be provided like housing, healthcare, education, all of these nice things by the states. There have to be trade-offs. I'm not saying that necessarily don't stop providing everything, but you need to understand trade-offs. If I provide this, then I'm not providing that.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. Like, you need to understand that there's always a loss somewhere. Nothing comes just because, it comes.
And the acceptance of that, I'll tell you why I'm mentioning this. When Fees Must Fall was happening at that time, and the state now is beginning to say, hey guys, this thing is bigger than what we thought it would be, we're being marched upon here in Parliament. One of the things that they told the students was to say, listen, because we didn't budget for what we're now giving you because of your threats, essentially, we have to take this money from elsewhere. And you need to agree morally that this is what we should do. One of the places where they took money from was ECD, early childhood development, creches. Suddenly, genuinely poor kids, lowest LSM, who benefited from various subsidies that were sent to early childhood development centers. And by the way, some of these ECDs that I mentioned are not like your nice daycare creches. Sometimes it's a lady's back room somewhere in Lokshini, and she's getting a subsidy to do this. Now, again, whether you think the state should or shouldn't be doing this is irrelevant to the point I'm making. But the state made it clear that, look, if we give you this money, these are some of the places where we need to take that. And the students said, no, that scarcity doesn't exist. That taking from Paul to give to Peter whilst robbing Daniel, that doesn't exist. Everybody must get money. And the state found itself in that position of now having to explain basic economics and really basic budgeting to a bunch of students, the people we thought are, the very people that should be at the top of this issue. But I think Mpiyakhe's point was important in that regard, because that's the politics of South Africa to a large extent. It's accepting that if I give you something, someone else must, give it essentially, or have it taken away rather, because that's how the state works. We don't give things voluntarily to the state. There's always the threat of a gun and taking it. But I digress, guys, I digress. I did want us to move on a little bit. There was a very interesting development also in our politics. There was this, in terms of, because we began this conversation by saying, are the politicians in tune with what's happening in the ground? Let's look at another role player in society. Are the media in tune with what's happening on the ground? Because as I speak to you now, that very same story we began with about the two kids and the mother who were burnt, I don't think I've seen it yet in mainstream media. It really blew up on social media, number one. Number two, something else happened in this country which the media forced us to pay attention to and to talk about and to make it the big issue of the week. And that is the FW De Klerk, that kombucha came back. The FW De Klerk issue. Suddenly, we now must worry. And again, I don't know what your personal views are, and I'll let you guys give your own views. But I was just taken aback at us now being forced by the media and, of course, their friends in politics who played this card to worry about the words of the last apartheid politician, today an 80-something-year-old man. I don't get it. Why is he more important than what happened, let's say, either in the president's speech and really some of these other current affairs issues, or rather issues that happen in communities across the country happened. Jimmy, were you one of those people who cared and wants to strip him of his Nobel Prize now and another Newsweek of this man? Should we care?
Honestly, I don't think we should worry ourselves about relics of apartheid, you know?
Literally.
However, look.
Oh, here comes that deep water.
Look.
Yeah.
Look, I think South Africans need to decide on what they want to focus on right now.
Yeah.
Ne? What's the focus? Where are we going? What's the national agenda?
Yeah.
What are we doing? You know? Are we still concerned about what people say, what FW De Klerk has said? Are we still concerned about those meaningless things that add no value? Or are we going to concern ourselves with the day-to-day things that can actually move this country forward, you know? The whole circus of Sona and the debates and all that were ridiculed by the EFF by pointing at things that don't add real value to the daily lives of people, you know? And that's where our problem is. And I am disappointed in mainstream media for entertaining this, for being the facilitators of this comedy, you know? Because have you seen how they flock to Julius Malema's press briefings? You know? It's ridiculous.
It's really embarrassing,
You know,
also, because you ask yourself the issue or the question, guys, these are professional journalists, media, news hounds, what they used to be called back in the day. They should be searching for the news angle in this. Instead, they're the ones who are seemingly easily distracted by some of these issues. And again, there's some big fanboys for Julius Malema in our media, where if he sneezes, suddenly they all catch a cold. But Mpiyakhe, Jimmy was raising a very important point, and I think it relates to an article you wrote maybe 4 weeks ago around the public itself in this country having to shoulder some responsibility with the distractions, and the public, that same public, needing to answer the question, do they set the agenda for a vision of this country? You want to maybe quickly, briefly revisit that and make your point?
So I agree with Sitled. I agree with both of you that we have more important issues in the country. I mean, I really don't care what FW De Klerk's opinion is. I mean, it's just like, you know, it's like everyone has an opinion on everything. I mean, why would I care about this particular? Like, he has zero power at this present moment. Like it's what I do think matters though is as a society we should understand what constitutes a crime against humanity.
Yes. And
what did end up worrying me as the debates went on was to see how many people didn't understand what this was. People kept quibbling over the number of dead bodies during
exactly.
And it's not that's not the only definition of a crime against humanity.
No, I killed 5 people and he killed 50. He's the one who committed a crime against humanity. It's like, wait a minute, what? But yeah, sorry, yeah.
It would be ridiculous. What De Klerk was implying when he spoke, I watched the interview where he said this, that it's not a crime against humanity. What he was essentially implying was because we didn't kill enough people like in Rwanda and where else, like it didn't qualify as a crime. But if you actually look what the crime against humanity is defined as, and you look at what's happened in South Africa, things like mass dispossessions of property and restricting people where they could move, like, I mean, being forced to use a passport within your own country, things like that, like being put in nature in reserves and not being restricted your movement in terms of going out and in and out of those reserves. Those things are crimes against humanity. No one needs to die for those things to qualify as a crime against humanity because they are a gross or a mass violation of liberty, and that's a proper meaning of a crime against humanity. And so for that I would like everyone to understand what it means, so that we understand how things like EWC, how do they affect what we understand as crimes against humanity. Is EWC a crime against humanity? Well, how I sort of look at it is that it in of itself it's not a crime against humanity, but it's an enabling act for a crime against humanity. Because what it will allow government to commit those crimes. I'm not saying it's going
against
to happen
life, liberty, and property.
Exactly.
Like for me, that's the litmus test.
Yeah.
Does an intention of a politician seek to infringe on my ability to enjoy my quality of life, my God-given, in my case, I believe it's a God-given, not a state-given right to my liberty, and of course my property. property rights.
Because of that, it's liberty, but it's a violation of liberty, but it's a mass scale.
Yes.
So there's to be like a substantial part of the population that is affected to qualify as a crime against humanity. So government in a future government might possibly decide to use this amendment to the constitution in order to deprive millions of South Africans, whether by race, by sexual orientation, by religion, whatever it is. They may decide to do that in future, and that's what worries me, that we haven't learned the lesson from apartheid.
Absolutely.
And that we need to stop these crimes from ever happening again.
Jimmy, we have not learned the lesson from both colonial times, apartheid, and even today's regime, where we have sections of the public at least, who continue to believe that, no, we must give more of these powers to politicians because maybe my favorite politician is now in power. So, I mean, if we were living back in the days of like about 1910, the Union of South Africa, and if we were English-speaking South African, we'd be saying, oh, no, but, we're giving power to our favorite politicians, and they will decide on what the course of South Africa looks like, right? And if we're living in 1948, with, those who maybe voted in the National Party, they would be saying the exact same thing. We're giving our favorite politicians the power to decide on whose life, liberty, and property rights are infringed. And equally, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's true, today's iteration of politicians are emboldened with that same sense of there is a public who voted for us to infringe on another group's life, liberty, and property. Yeah. Kanti Jimmy, when does that end? What should a future society really look like?
Look, I think people have outsourced their lives, to a government. We see it everywhere. Like the government needs to do this, they need to do that, they need to do this for me, they need to do that for me.
Hey, just yesterday, Uber drivers were blocking roads and saying, we need government to come and regulate our industry. I was like, guys, do you know what you're asking for? Anyway, sorry, Jimmy, you were saying?
Yeah, no, exactly. No, what I mean is that we've outsourced our agents, to a government, And the more people realized how non-restrictive the world has become, the better, Like this is an example of its own, Back in the day, you needed a particular media house, to house you and to publish you. Mm-hmm. You couldn't publish yourself,
Who's this guy?
Yeah. But now you can publish yourself, And there are so many other things that you can do yourself. That you don't actually need the government to do it for you. And people are realizing that. I think there's a group of men who are...
Harry Smith.
Sorry,
exactly. you literally read my mind.
Yeah.
Because I'll be doing an episode about them. But sorry, Jim.
Yeah, but nonetheless, they're showing us
absolutely
that you can actually do it,
So I'll put a link to a video. Up here, just showing a carte blanche feature before I do mine, of the men that Jimmy is talking about. Jimmy, your final thought?
But nonetheless, the point is that a future society is one where government is merely an administrative thing, and not a management thing.
Yeah.
Government cannot manage. Government must just administer, so that we know that certain things, like we get our IDs that need to be sort of like approved by a particular body and so on and so forth. And it ends there, and I think that's more and more people will realize it. And that's what the future looks like.
Mpiyakhe, a future of defining the role of the state and limiting perhaps it?
No, I agree completely with Jimmy. Like we've sort of outsourced, and I just wanted to mention one thing just because of what Jimmy said. Like people don't understand the tight relationship between like the benefits that go to labor and the growth of capital. The more capital grows, like the YouTube example is a perfect one, because now the reason why people are able to do things like this, like the Big Liberty Show, Blacks Only, and so on, and put them up on YouTube, is that Google has put up the servers for them, and then they charge you a fraction of the amount that you used to have to pay for, like signals getting on the airways and all of that. And so because they've invested all of this capital, it has allowed you, Sihle, to be a host. It allows your camera people, your technical people here in the studio, it has allowed them to perform those jobs without having access to a traditional studio. Or
That's
whatever.
right.
And so it makes your labor more valuable. And if more people understood this, they would understand that there shouldn't be any frictional relationship between capital and labor. These people should be friends. Yeah.
Absolutely. Guys, I must end it off over here. Excellent show as usual. Guys, wait, man, what would I be without you guys? Come on now. And thank you for watching this episode of The Big Liberty Show. Before I let them go, guys, how do we find you on social media, Jimmy?
Jimmy Ramokgopa on all social media platforms and also Politics SA.
All right. Mpiyakhe, how do we find you?
Twitter, Turing_91, and then on Facebook, it's just Mpiyakhe Dhlamini, and then I have a website as well, MpiyakheDlamini.com.
Excellento. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this episode. Remember, you can support the work that your favorite fat boy does right over here. Remember, by becoming a friend of the IRR. This is our crowdfunding campaign, how we make our shekels here in the studio. And you can become a friend and donate 90 Rand a month by either SMSing your name to 32823, and SMS will cost you 1 Rand. Terms and conditions do apply. Or hey, find us online at irr.org.za/join, and you can sign up to become a friend over there. Guys, remember, like, share, and subscribe to the Big Daddy Liberty channel on social media. I must announce this now. There are some big changes coming to the channel. Good changes at that, and you might be hearing me on many more avenues in this country. But let me not spoil anything, except to say, guys, thank you for your support. Remember, always share my content. Let your friends see what we get up to here, and hit that subscribe button and the bell notification on YouTube so that you're always reminded when an episode goes out. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and remember, never trust a commie.